gotten the sillies out of your system?
I'm ready.
Great. Welcome.
Fortune, etymology, thoughts on what fortune means.
No. Shush. Yeah. So,
Part 9.
This is the Reversal of Fortunes, Part 9. Day Life Armies, Reversal of Fortunes. Welcome, everyone. Make a wash of belief. If you've been following this, following along with us so far, you might know a bit about it, but washing belief is part of soul redemption. It's how you gain back a little access to soul. We're not saying you don't have soul, just get a little access back to it. Or, wash it all and see what happens.
Scary.
Wouldn't quite actually recommend that.
Is anyone ready?
You can make financial washes to cash.me/$washitall or paypal.me/washitall. You can also DM me on Instagram at daylifemary, or I guess this is going to be on Twitter too, Duchess O Daylife, to ask about other ways to wash financially or socially. Those are the two pairs. We have people start their washes with a financial and a social wash. So, this is sponsored by the Automat. Now that we have that ad out of the way, let's get into it. Let's get into the thick of it. Fortune. We're getting a little bit meta today. We're like, what does the topic's reversal of fortunes, and we went really deep into our own stories with that last Strung. But what does fortune mean? What does it seem to mean, and what do we think it really means? Etymology is tricky, right? Because Google can just kind of like in real time mandala affect us and like say different definitions of things and change it all up and whatever.
Especially because she has an active, handler who works at CERN. It changes things.
As soon as he hears me talking, he's like, oh.
We were like watching some show that I had watched 10 years ago or something, and every time she would like mention, what's with this? Like the next episode, it would have that.
You like address my concerns. He was like, yeah, CERN's rewriting it for you.
Like, let me fix that for you, Duchess.
Jokes aside.
The jokes, you think they're jokes.
Fortune means, usually like people think of it as wealth or prosperity in the realm of like material wealth and prosperity. Someone came into a fortune. Money, fiat, gold, goods. Also, though, and perhaps even more of an encompassing definition is, let's get biblical with it, how it shows up in the scriptures, that it is a larger prosperity. It is like your fortune, meaning more than just material, your favor with Yahuwah, how you what you receive. Now, some people also might confuse, including ourselves, fortune with luck or like
fortune telling.
Yeah.
Did you look into that etymology?
I didn't look into that, but I thought of fortune tellers specifically as I was thinking of like astrologers and other people who use kind of have perverted sacred sciences to do a little bit of idolatry, whether they're conscious of it or not.
Well, it's interesting because isn't the whole idea in the Old Testament and that like you'll have fortune on earth if you worship your Creator, because like all of the all the big players and David and Solomon and all of these guys were like the ones who worship the most had like a bunch of fortune on earth. But then in the Christian Bible it's like no, the ones who like suffer the most Sure, the New Testament. The ones who suffer the most have the most fortune in the afterlife or in New Jerusalem or whatever. They both seem kind of off to me. Like, there's probably a combination of the both.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm not enough of a studied, like, I don't know enough about scripture. I don't know enough about mistranslations and what's like the parts to take and what parts are misdirections, etc., to like know enough of like I couldn't tell you like believe this, but my vibe of like what I believe is basically like in the Old Testament it was very much like you can have material wealth and it doesn't mean you're like corrupted. In fact, if you have it because of your adherence to like the commandments and Yahuwah, it's like a more preserved and in like it can't be rocked. Like you have like some good longevity in terms of like fortune or whatever. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you turn away from and start to sin, separate yourself from, you know, doing those things, you know, getting a little, listening to Satan's ear, that's when, like, you lose the material fortune you have. And, like, I have probably a similar understanding that you're just describing. Like, the New Testament is very much, like, do not, well, I think in the New Testament still, they're like, just don't worship money itself, but you can still...
Are there any rich people in the New Testament?
No, the New Testament
all of it, it's
is
like
very
they get
much
skinned
like...
alive or crucified or like, you know, all the big ballers were all like tortured to death with the idea that this is just a temporal thing and then the next is coming, you know. But that could be interpreted, if you think heaven's on earth and heaven can come here, it's just like that could just be the eye of the needle. And then on the other side of the eye of the needle, it's not when you're dead. The whole idea that you only go to heaven once you die is like that, you know, it's just once you pass through. And maybe that's an allegory for something like the pleasure matrix.
Yeah, like my idea of the whole thing with the New Testament is, first of all, with like the timelines being different than everyone thinks. It's like the part of the New Testament that's like describing Yahusha coming and like dying for your sins, for mankind's sins, and then like that time period is very much like everyone who follows him has to go against and suffer and like temporarily have hardships to stand in that truth or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then because they've done that, he's saying like you will have 1,000-year reign of peace and prosperity after getting through this difficult, you know, eye of the needle of like standing up for that and, you know, like having me in your heart rather than just obeying commandments, you know? Like that I feel like isn't talking about them going to heaven, it's about like the millennial reign on earth. Mm-hmm. And then the period we're in now, it's like this little season, this few hundred years confusion, Hasatan let loose on all four corners for a while to like try and do a bunch of feints and tricks that like seem like that time period before the 1,000-year reign that was really difficult. Mm-hmm. When in actuality, right now, you're just trying to not get tricked so you can not be one of those souls that Hasatan captures. You can be in the book of life, you know, you can like experience that return of heaven on earth or New Jerusalem or just like life outside of Hasatan's realm, right? It's just like, and that would have plenty of prosperity and like fortune and material wealth and things that like there would be no scarcity in that way. But right now it's still an important time. In that context, I would think like right now it's still an important time to like stick to truth and not like pick things that feel easier, that worship that beast system or whatever. Like, and what fortune means nowadays is so warped. Like, I think we can agree that no one who's like, there are certain amounts of money that you can get and like material problems will be solved and your life will get better. But then there's like a shit ton of stuff still missing in the emotional and spiritual realm. And after that threshold point of like enough money to have certain things taken care of that will make your like quality of life better, you can't just like have a better life. And no one is satisfied from money, you know? Like no one's, like the things that make you fortunate, quote unquote.
You're chewing and eating.
Sorry. The things that make you fortunate are directly in accordance with like the actions you're taking and like what you choose to worship, and you know, the actions you take towards whatever, you know. What do you think?
I don't really know. I don't really know much about any of this, so I'm here to learn on this live more than to assert what my opinion is, because I'm not someone who should be listened to about like worship and fear of the creator, I think.
Well, I think you certainly have your own story though.
That's true.
And that's all I have too. I have my own story. Like, what I'm trying to do is like honestly parse my way through a lot of like confusion and just be able to discern what feels like, with all the information I have, what feels right and what actions I take, like how that affects my life, and to follow like the movement like towards what feels like it's working.
Right.
And a ton of it just comes down to like faith and choosing to go all in on believing something and seeing where it gets you. But I don't know. I'm getting off topic from my notes on what we were going to talk about today.
Let's get on topic. Let's figure it out. What's going on?
Well,
we want to talk about what deserving means and what...
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, there are things that people would call fortune, or that are more like... I'm categorizing things as, like, good fortune in our context is, like, favor and, like, a life being given certain things from Yahuwah, from your actions of worshiping him and therefore doing certain actions, like not partaking or doing certain things that are quote unquote sinful, as in the context of like things that separate you from your humanity, and doing the things that make you more human, you know, getting closer to Yahuwah. Like, that's a way to gain more fortune in your life. But then there's also this idea of things that are not actually that fortune, that are like luck or superstitions, charms, curses against people to like try and get things for yourself. Like being very much like, I need to like follow these angel numbers and like listen to my horoscopes and trust in that it's a Mercury's in retrograde or it's a full moon right now, and like that if I do gematria and I'm like in the Illuminati, I'll get all this like wealth or power or whatever. Like all these things are like fake fortunes, and it's just a perversion of sacred sciences. Like, I'm not saying the moons aren't real and they don't have effects on people and all that, but like turning to them as your guidance and worshiping those things and like thinking those things will give you the fortunes or the like lucks or the things, like that's all not actually
hogwash
fortune at all. It's just like different types of materialist worship, aka just like worshiping Hasatan's realm. So that's kind of like the difference in what we're talking about, I guess, those two differences.
Okay.
And part of that is I feel like most people who get really salty at Yahuwah, including us, it's because we're very programmed with this idea that like people should deserve things, like because you've done something you like deserve something in return. Like that whole concept is very much not like really how things work actually, and it can make for a lot of like resentments and I don't know, like everything's given by the grace of Yahuwah. Like you don't know what it is or what you need, and you can like say I deserve this or that, but it's very much kind of like that is not really trusting in the process that this realm exerts itself in or how it works. Like you can control your own actions and of course have your own hopes and plans for the future, but ultimately like none of that's actually completely in your control. Like the path lays as it does around you by his grace, and like you can know that you're working closer in accordance with that plan by taking certain actions, and you know that like there are other actions you can take down a different path that will like stray you further from that fortunate path. What do you say to that?
I think, yeah, I guess. I don't know. This is not my bread and butter. I don't always... You don't
have to like know anything or be right or wrong about anything. It's like...
I just, I don't spend that much of my life blaming Yahuwah for things. I kind of blame... What?
I just don't buy that.
Then you don't buy it. But that's just... It's not like I spend it because I'm so thankful and that I spend all my time being thankful of Yahuwah. I just I usually blame forces, people in a physical reality or like physical circumstances. It's very little to do with like me being like, this is because Yahuwah is doing something to me, blessing me or punishing me. So that's just my experience of life. That's how I grew up. It has barely, like there's been changes in that I've noticed when I'm more thankful, more things happen in my life. Mm-hmm. But I don't conflate that with like a Yahuwah in the sky doing stuff. So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know much about this. I'm not like, this isn't really my field of knowledge. And I'm not my spirituality is not like as defined as other people in this army.
Well, like, just think back to what you just said about feeling a certain way and outcomes differing.
Yeah, just being thankful. I think all of that's real. I don't know if that's because like then him like changes what's gonna happen because of that. I don't really get that part. I don't claim to. Kind of am like leaving that up to the people who do know, or the creator himself that knows. That's why I'm like struggling to talk about stuff in this, because I don't have like a thing that I would feel qualified to explain to anyone. Like I know better than they do.
Well, that's not the point either. It's like your own experience. And I guess it does really depend on like what you pay attention to and what you believe in about your experience. Because, like,
I definitely think there's a collab between human being and Yahuwah, or like the whatever that. To me, I don't like visualize it as like a person or something. I don't know. There's like a collab that you do your part, and then you trust that the rest is being handled by the guy in the sky or whatever.
Well, I don't even like. I don't. Maybe you think I have a different idea than I actually do.
I don't know how you feel. I'm just saying how I feel when it kind of gets into like. Yeah, I'm just saying I don't really get it. It's not. That's why I don't feel like qualified to talk about it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm wondering just like, why do you have to be qualified to talk? That's the part that's getting me hung up. Like,
I guess in my brainwashing, like, you should know something if you're going to talk about it.
Well, I guess to me it's like, you know you're a human and you know what you feel and you know what you believe or don't believe in or what you struggle or don't struggle with. Like, I can admit that I will take things a little too intellectual. I will take things into a realm of like trying to teach other people when I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about certain things. But like, when I think about some of this stuff, and maybe I should go more into this side of things, but like when I think about like my relationship with my creator, when I think about how I conceptualize things happening to me, I don't need to have known anything, or like I don't need to have read certain things to feel certain things, which is like, I feel that every single thing came from one source. So of course every person in my life who's having an interaction with me, every person who does things to me or that I do things to, like everything that happened, every cause or effect is all coming from a source that loves me and has a path for me, and I have free will to make choices on that path that affect different outcomes. Like, I don't need to know shit. It's like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the difficulty is like, we're trying to kind of like talk about things that are a little more maybe defined right now, but to me it's still all coming from a place of just like experiencing human beingness and listening to the signs and symbols and forces around you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And I will admit, like, the parts that bog me down, like, I was raised by atheists. I did not go to church. I don't have a religion, but I believe there is endless, like, ability to find things in scripture.
See, I'm more into the religion side of it. Like, I think that probably the religious, like, I don't really understand having a personal relationship with the creator. I never have. It's like a blind spot to me. I don't get it, because I was born without that being something that I was practicing or anything, and I still today I don't get it. But I do see religion, or just like the ritual doing things over and over again and living in a sort of way and being with a community of people doing it, as very helpful to human beings. But on a personal level, I don't get it. But I see it working, and when I do those things in my life, I see results, but it's very divorced from a personal relationship. And that's my issue with it, I think. I think that's a big, I don't know if it's a problem, but it feels like a problem in my life.
To me, it kind of makes me sad to hear that, but I don't want to be like, that sounds like a kind of a bitchy or a judgmental thing to say. But like, I don't know, like, there are moments where I'm just wondering, like, you haven't had moments where something like so crazy happens, or just like a moment where you feel certain things and you feel a connection to that?
Not in the way that everyone who talks about it who has a common experience has it. Especially with, like, you know, the, like, saved by Jesus Christ thing. That shit I do not understand whatsoever. And I'm trying to, like, I would love to understand it, because people who have that seem a lot happier.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm stuck behind not getting to that. I'm not even saying it's for Jesus or whatever, or for Yeshua. But even with a relationship with God, I feel like, you know, these terms are confusing because they're very prominent. I guess we're getting to that at some point, right?
Probably,
we're going to talk about that. I have problems with just getting down to, like, the feeling of that, you know, love or whatever. But it's like, when I pray every day, my life is better. When I do the things every day, my life is better. And so I kind of have to just go, that's the best I can do for now. I'm not saying, maybe it's just coming. Maybe it'll just be like some moment that I'm just not ready for, to, like, accept the light or whatever. That it's just gonna all make sense, all of it. But it just hasn't yet. Being very vulnerable in this live, but, you know, take it.
I'm into it. It feels like it's not you know, it's off script, but it feels relevant.
Off script.
Because I think we've had our own conversations personally about this, and it is a bit of a disconnect. Like, there are things that are different that we experienced quite differently, and I think that, like, I don't know, doing certain actions and things that, like you say, they do help and they do bring you closer. It takes away worship from one area that doesn't give you anything actually human that results from worshiping in that area, and it takes that worship or belief and it puts it in a place that gives you things back that make you more human and make your life better. That's very real. But I am like, well, it seems really difficult to do it without the feeling part of it, like the connection part of it. But maybe, like you said, just doing it is enough to get there eventually. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But for me, like, well, I had this psalm to read that I was going to read because it was like the thing most connected to the word fortune. And it was just like fortune as in the context we're describing it.
Sure.
And that was...
Do you want me to read it?
Psalm 128.
You want to read it?
Why don't you read it? Just replace the words that aren't correct, like Yahuwah and
Got it.
Yahusha.
Are those in here? I don't think
so. Lord, yeah.
Okay, I understand. Okay, blessed, happy, fortunate to be envied is everyone who fears, reveres, and worships Yahuwah, who walks in his ways and lives according to his commandments. For you shall eat the fruit of the labor of your hands. Happy, blessed, fortunate, enviable. It's the saying like happy, blessed, fortunate, enviable shall you be, and it shall be well with you. Your wife shall be like a fruitful wine. Sorry, I'm not a great reader. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine in the innermost parts of your house. Your children shall be like olive plants round about your table. Behold, thus shall the man be blessed, who reverently and worshipfully fears Yahuwah. May Yahuwah bless you out of Zion, his sanctuary, and may you see the prosperity of Yerushalayim all the days of your life. Yes, may you see your children's children. Peace be upon Israel.
Alrighty. So I picked that scripture because it talks about, different synonyms, but basically being fortunate is those who fear, revere, worship Yahuwah, and do actions according to, what he tells you to do. And that the things that are fortunate, your wife, your family, longevity, children, your table full, all these things that they can mean so many different things in the modern context, right?
Mm-hmm.
They come with that worship and fear, the fear that inspires you to follow those commandments. And you will be fortune, the Creator will favor you for doing those things and fearing him.
That's right.
And this modern world is so hard to deal with language and these terms and the baggage that comes with them, because you immediately want to be fear, that sounds like a bad thing, and fear, that sounds a little I don't know, it's very masculine, and masculine is pretty much destroyed nowadays, so everyone's kind of programmed to be triggered by it and think it's evil and trying to control you in a bad way.
Well, is fear even the right word exactly? It's kind of like being in awe, right? But responding to your awe, recognizing the power of something and responding accordingly. It's not being afraid, I'm so scared that what's gonna happen. It's recognizing the power and the awesomeness of the Creator, right?
I think it's that, yeah, and I think it's also a little bit of maybe humans are gonna always have a bit of fear, at least now in this time in the little season especially, but
probably
I think,
forever.
I think that for me, I see this, and the way it applies to us, I think, and how I want to talk about it in that context. I'll start talking about it in my own context, my life and how I have fear. I have so much fear. It's white women are very programmed to be super fearful and anxious people, and my whole life I have chose to believe in fears of certain things, and they're irrational, but here they are, fears of being destitute or poor or scarcity, not having enough, and that's from old shit in my genetics, the crops failing, the famines, whatever, but and fearing not having money, not being safe or whatever, and all of those fears are basically me worshiping Hasatan, because those are part of the material realm that he runs, and believing in or focusing on those fears causes me to act in certain ways that are more sinful. And sinful, I mean separating myself from my humanity. I have doubt. I operate in a false scarcity mindset. I'm concerned with making money or making choices that are bad, lying or hurting other people, to make sure I can assuage those, is that a word? Those fears that are actually unfounded. And when I stop and I take my fears out of
white
those,
women, yeah.
I take my fears out of those places, and it could be different things from that realm that other people fear, fear of how they are going to be perceived by others, fear of losing it all and disappointing your family or whatever. All of these things, I think what we could do is to actually stop fearing those things. And what if we were afraid of what would happen if we kept lying, kept stealing, kept cheating, kept like making decisions based out of a perceived threat, or like in a way to get over ahead on someone else, or make a bad decision because everyone else is going to make it, and in this pain matrix world, if you don't make it, someone else will make it for you, like that kind of shit. It's like, maybe don't fear that stuff as much, and instead fear what's going to happen to you if you keep indulging in those behaviors. And you maybe like fear a little bit of like how the big realm, the Yahuwah's realm that owns Hasatan's material realm and owns everything, like how will that realm treat you? How will your fortune be on a larger scale if you keep following down and fearing those things? Right. I think for me, I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna have a little fear in my life, maybe I should be more fearful of like those longer term, like eternal like what's gonna happen to me and my soul, like, you know. So I think like there can be, if you're gonna have some fear, yes, the thing you talked about, being in awe of and therefore like responding to such something that great, but also like maybe fearing more of like how things work when you just kind of fall down a certain path versus not. I don't know. That's kind of like my own story with fear and how I think of it in this context. Because yeah, if I feared Yahuwah more, I think I would actually have more motivation to not do something fiendy. Like, let me just give you an example. Like, I was lying to you the last months, really, because I was afraid if I told you the truth about like stuff having to do with our housing and how like much we were in the red or not, or whatever, like I had a fear that if I like told you that things were a certain way, you wouldn't try as hard, or that like I was afraid of like I don't know, just like I had to give you information, basically. Like I couldn't just not give you any information, and so I gave you just like false information. And I think that if I had less fear in like material stability and these things that Hasatan reigns over, like that's his realm here, and I instead feared more about what would happen in my life as a consequence of lying, it's where I chose fear, is that shows where I chose to worship, and how my life was therefore affected. And like you were saying earlier, even if you have a trouble connecting to like what the conception of what your creator is or looks like or acts or whatever, or like feeling it, you can pretty clearly, in this army especially, recognize the patterns and how your life gets in choosing each direction of worship. So what about you in terms of that?
Yeah, I mean, I believe a more appropriate vehicle for fear is, rather than fearing all the day-to-day things in your life, you know, fearing being abandoned. I mean, for me, you know, fearing being abandoned or losing favor with my girlfriend or the favor of the army or the family that I'm in, or my family, my organization that I'm in, the short term, like whether people are not going to like me or hate me or think that I'm unacceptable or yell at me or not do the things that I want them to do, or, you know, not just, you know, all of those things that I might fear. Instead, fearing the favor, so basically losing favor with everyone around you. Basically, instead of fearing losing favor with all the people around you, for me it's very personal. And like, you know, that means the people in your personal, professional, you know, people out there losing their favor. Worry about losing the favor of the creator, because you can be a really popular person with a lot of people and be completely bankrupt spiritually and be destitute in terms of what favor, and you can have $1 billion or whatever, but again, doesn't make you happy. There's very few cases where they've shown like just money is enough. I mean, if you see people who win the lottery, like None of them are
Ruins
happy.
their
It ruins
lives,
their life
actually.
because they can't handle it because they don't. It's divorced. So I think rather than fearing that, because that's a big deal for me, is fearing how I will be, what my relationship within what other people will be. Rather than fearing that, fear, the favor that, you get from the Creator. And even if the thing that I've learned is through lying because you think it will get you more favor with people and they won't see, if you hide the real the real me from them, you'll be able to build the favor. It never actually works. It may work in the short term over a phone call or over a few phone calls or whatever. In the end, people recognize, the favor gets lost, and then there's like a double thing of like, well, you lost more favor than you would have ever lost me if you had just been true, even if it was something that was unacceptable to me. So rather than being so caught up in that, worrying about missing out, for me it's like FOMO. It's like FOMO, I think, is a great millennial expression that they made, because I think it really is a very good term. But like FOMO for missing out on, being inscribed in the book of life, it's kind of, the only FOMO that human beings really should have. You can have FOMO about a bunch of things that are irrelevant, whether you were there at the right time, at the right point, you went to the right party, kissed the right girl, blah, 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 that you were there for Vaporwave, or there for like internet culture, you were there for gorilla pictures. I don't even remember.
These things are ephemeral and meaningless in the end.
What are they?
Imagine
Gorilla
that.
apes, bored apes. If you were there for bored apes or whatever the thing is, there for Woodstock 99.
With the bonfires and the fires.
that one was more funny for me than 69. If you were there for all of that, like, no, it's like, were you there for when it mattered to like making it onto New Year's Shalim? Like, did you
make the right?
Did you make the cut? Yeah.
Decisions.
And you should be afraid to miss it. And I this is like preach it, from a sinner who doesn't necessarily implement these things in my life. I'm far from perfect. I'm not even close to perfect. I'm far from even good. But I can recognize that it's true, and then on a day-to-day basis, it's just whether you like go with that recognition of truth or be like, I'm just gonna go on my junkie shit today, because that's just so much. It just hits. It's easier way to hit the thing. So.
And what you were saying about like the relationships that matter and like prioritizing them, it's really funny how this works, because like when you have your Creator as the most important relationship in your life, what does He give you? All of your relationships being better. Your family, your husband or wife, your partners, your like everyone, those relationships get better, because when you worship Yahuwah as your Creator, everything that comes brings you closer to your humanity. So when you're closer to your humanity, imagine that you can humanly connect to other people better. When you, even if it's under the guise of like wanting to make one specific relationship better, and so you're like believing in that relationship and like focusing on maybe bad decisions to do what you want to get that relationship better, that those bad decisions are sin separating you from the human beingness that makes those relationships work. So
it's like a man think he's gonna get the girl by being like, oh, I worship you, being the ultimate reply guy,
rather than the woman seeing that he has a thing and Creator that he believes in, and standards and like commitment,
purpose in his life.
So like I guess we kind of answered these, but the things that this is talking about in terms of the context of reversal of fortunes, or what fortune is. Fortune is something controlled by Yahuwah. That is the force that changes our fortune. And ultimately, He is in control even if we have free will.
He's in command. He's above.
Control is not the right word.
I care so
much.
much.
He's in command, and through grace and will.
Like an automaton.
Like, there's really only so much you can do in terms of, like, and control is the right word in this case, trying to control how your life works out exactly. You can just be like, you know what, I'm going to recognize that power, and I'm going to exercise my free will to worship that. Because everyone's going to worship anything. It's how we're designed. That's something I learned in this army, and it's that phrase exactly, like, we will worship, and what we worship is the way we have free will to choose what we worship. So that's, like, I think we both have a lot of daddy issues, and I think it ties into the large daddy issue, the largest one of all, our relationship with Yahuwah,
our Heavenly
Creator.
Father.
Like, I'm just, in the smaller ways that I disrespect men in life here, and, like, want to disobey things
Not me,
that
she
men
respects me
say.
too much.
But I respect the parts of you that are super satanic and, like, feminine, and, like, that's because I kind of like desecrating masculinity. So I'm like, oh, you're kind of desecrated in these certain ways. I'm sorry, but, like, let me be, like, yeah, you know? Like, in terms of what is a masculine presence exerting itself, I'm kind of like, fuck you. And so I would say, like, I often disrespect and ignore things I could do in favor for things that are, like, I don't know, just being, like, resenting the Creator. I don't know, like, how to say this because it's such an unconscious level that I'm doing this. But, like, on these unconscious levels, I start making concrete choices or actions that are, like, choosing to do things that make my own life worse, or disrespect other people, or are arrogant, or just, like, deny the things that I know to be true, but, like, keep denying that Yahuwah is in command of things, and, like, that's where the choices I make over and over again to kind of deny that and choose the thing that's, like, easy or motivated by the wrong kinds of, like, fear and anxiety and whatever. I guess making those decisions every day are a bit of the, like, affront to my Creator, and being like, whatever, like, go away. I don't believe in you today. Like, you know?
Yes. Oops. Okay, well, what a good...
What about you?
Oh, what do I have to talk about? Yahuwah and our biggest daddy issue of all.
You wrote these things. You say, like...
I didn't write these things.
What you have to talk about, you just put it into the script, your answer.
I forgot that I actually wrote
the way you said that made it seem like you're like, now to tell me what to say.
Oh, sorry, I forgot I wrote a whole thing for this. Sorry, y'all. I'm drifting a little bit. Time to refocus. I have deprioritized living a life in worship and fear of our Creator in order to get through the day-to-day. Therefore, cursing myself to repeat the day-to-day over and over and over and over again. This is my own version of Groundhog Day that I've created for myself that I feel stuck in. I think once I figure out how to worship correctly and amend that behavior, and I start put my fear in the right place, transfer it, that I'll be able to get out. I don't know if any of y'all have seen Groundhog Day. It's an excellent film. But
we've watched it a lot.
We've watched it so many times, which is kind of how you have to watch it. you have to watch Groundhog Day like 90 times. Maybe just I do because I'm stuck in it. So it's like, it's the key. Once he like becomes a good person, which his version of becoming a good person isn't the exact like version, but it's pretty good. He has a pretty good version of it. Once he figures that all out, he still gets the things that he wants. In a day, he gets the thing that he like wants and like solves all the, he's just had practice to do that day like a million times. But the idea, the salvation that he gets in that is like, he gets the girl that he's in love with. He gets like, finds purpose in his life. And like, by repeating that over and over again, by the time he's ready, it all happens for him, which is like the creator can make. That's why I have to have faith that like I will figure it out, and when I do, I have faith that the creator can make everything happen in your life all at once. You can scratch that spiritual lottery ticket and just get all the things that you want.
Yeah, like fortune, in the context of fortune being like the favor and the things that will actually improve your life, whatever those may be. Yeah. Those can be material and emotional and spiritual. They can be like, there's no like against being rich. It's just what types of fortune, I guess. And like you're making me think again of another thing, which is like you were saying this at the very beginning too, kind of like you don't get the whole like coming to Jesus thing, like that whole kind of new Christian that's more like maybe more a little bit religious-y, I might say. Anyways, it just made me think of this idea that I remembered someone somewhere like being like, well, how would you get somewhere, or like if you have to like go through this process, what if it's someone who doesn't use the right name or term, or like know it in the context of a certain thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking, this is like my own kind of personal feeling here, or how I think things work. But I think that like being a human inscribes you with not only DNA, but like also in that DNA and body and whatever, like a certain knowingness. Like it's like a certain program in you that every human has a bunch of shit on top of, or warping it or whatever. But I think every human can come back to it, and no matter who you are or where you are, like you can quote unquote be saved, or maybe like come in contact and recognize your humanity and like have a moment where you like connect to your creator and feel the certain way and act in a certain way that I think like every human can get to, no matter like where you are or what's happening to you.
Right.
And I think that that's like a feeling that, based on our conversation, I don't know if you have felt that. It doesn't seem like you have, but like it doesn't come through like having to like intellectually understand something super well.
Right.
Anyways, that was just a thought I had at the end of this. I think we're coming to the end here.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. That was part 9 of Reversals of Fortunes. I hope you watched the whole thing and you made it to the end. Good job. So we have another 3 of these, right? Part 10,
That's
11, and 12.
That's correct, Amanda.
And then we're on to a new topic. So
yeah, enjoy
the ones that are coming up. And have a great rest of your day, folks. No? Chat? What's up, chat? Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.